A man had a close encounter with a truck and arrived in the other world he had always dreamed of. However, not only did he not want any cheat codes, but he also wished to escape the hustle and bustle of life. To prevent the protagonist from starving to death at the start, the god thoughtfully prepared a starting gift package for him, including a freezer full of food and a house inaccessible to monsters. Just as the protagonist began to research how to unleash cool magic, he discovered that he could only release water and couldn't use magic at all. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration struck him. He remembered his chemistry knowledge from his previous life. Looking at the basin of water in front of him, he imagined himself combining hydrogen molecules and hydrogen atoms, successfully freezing the water in the basin into ice. Then, he successfully started a fire using a magnifying glass made of ice, took a nice bath, and the next morning remembered that the food the gods had prepared for him would only last 2 months. He still needed to train, so he immediately began practicing water magic. However, the power of the water spheres was pitifully weak. He then thought of directly spraying water, but that was also somewhat ineffective. However, with diligent practice, the power significantly increased. That evening, using the same principle as ice making, he created hot water. But compared to this useless water boiling magic, he preferred ice spikes, a magic useful for hunting. However, since it was his first, the protagonist failed to launch the water ball slash spray successfully on his first attempt. Unable to find a better feel for it, he repeatedly launched water balls and jets. After practicing for a while, he had made no progress except for exhausting his magic power. Desperate, he resorted to the most primitive method, hunting. While passing a stream, he discovered quartz. With it, he could live even without sunlight. However, just as he was searching for an antidote, a small wild boar targeted him. Because it was his first real battle, he froze for a moment, but fortunately managed to avoid the impact. Afterward, he composed himself and used Ice Demon and Ice Spikes, successfully counterattacked and killed the wild boar. Returning home that evening, the protagonist flipped through a monster encyclopedia. Seeing the dragon and demon marked as special class monsters, he sighed, but didn't dwell on it. The protagonist continued his daily forest explorations. Then one day, while eating fruit, he was suddenly attacked by a monster. However, after consulting the monster encyclopedia, he immediately recognized it as an assassin eagle. After analyzing its weaknesses, he engaged it in combat. Just as the eagle charged at him, the protagonist unleashed an ice wall, instantly knocking the eagle to the ground. Because its eye was injured, the eagle, after memorizing the protagonist's appearance, flew away. Seeing this, the protagonist, he breathed a sigh of relief. However, because he had been chased by the assassin eagle for so long, the protagonist got lost in the forest. He didn't find his way home until late at night. But while passing a lake, he encountered a headless horseman, not even listed in the monster encyclopedia. Fortunately, the horseman wasn't hostile, allowing him to leave. A long time passed, and the protagonist continued to explore the forest every day. Although he still encountered powerful monsters, they were nothing to him now that he could use ice spikes. Through this period of training, his magic became increasingly proficient, and every night he would challenge the headless horseman to a duel. Although each time beaten to a pulp, the headless knight didn't seem intent on killing the protagonist. Instead, it appeared to be training him in swordsmanship. And today, when the protagonist was defeated again, the knight gave him its ice sword and left. Some time passed, and the assassin eagle returned. Although it appeared to be purified, the protagonist had long since mastered its abilities and could now defend against the eagle's relentless air slashes. Seeing its attacks ineffective, the eagle swooped down, and the protagonist tumbled out of 10 layers of ice walls. However, the high-speed impact was unbearable. After the protagonist dodged the attack, the assassin eagle used an air slash. Taking advantage of the protagonist's defensive gap, the assassin eagle used a sonic attack, rendering the protagonist unable to cast any magic. Forced to engage in close combat with his sword, the protagonist, relying on the swordsmanship he learned from the headless horseman, struck the assassin eagle's vital point. But after winning, the protagonist wasn't overjoyed. Instead, he felt respect for the assassin eagle. It was because he anticipated the assassin eagle's revenge that the protagonist had grown so rapidly during this time. Therefore, the protagonist was actually grateful to the assassin eagle. That being said, however, the protagonist didn't win. He gave the assassin, the eagle, with a swift and decisive strike, finally granted the protagonist the final dignity of a warrior. On his way home, the protagonist unexpectedly encountered a powerful, magical dragon. "I have a question for you," the dragon asked. asked, "Do you think there are any other birds around here?" the dragon inquired. Fortunately, the dragon meant no harm. Facing such a powerful monster, the protagonist dared not lie and had to tell the truth. Thankfully, the dragon wasn't one of the dragon's familiars. More than that, the dragon wanted to know what kind of sword the protagonist carried. When the protagonist held out his hand, the dragon saw it was a part of the Fairy King's weapon. The dragon then realized that the protagonist had gained the Fairy King's approval. The two chatted until dusk before the dragon bid farewell and departed. Meanwhile, the gods were astonished to discover that the protagonist possessed a very rare hidden trait. His name was Brown, meaning he had a near infinite lifespan.